Sure. We were talking about how the only thing local to Poverty Point is the clay. So nothing else is from Poverty Point. Everything's imported in, which means that Poverty Point peoples either left and went and got it, or someone brought it to the site. So the only thing we have is the citronelle gravel, and that's from 25 to 30 miles, or the sandstone, which is south of Poverty Point. But as I said earlier, we have many, many, many stone artifacts. Over 78 tons of stone has been recovered from the site, and none of it's local. That's just one of the many reasons why this is such a unique and fascinating site. And we're going to talk a little bit about each of these artifacts and the way in which they were used. So when we talk about hunting technology, I always ask the kids in the class, I'm like, how did the native peoples at Poverty get their food? They always say, oh, they hunted with a bow and arrow. But no, Louisiana Native Americans, prehistoric Native Americans, never used the bow and arrow until much, much later. And instead they used the atlatl. And that's what you see here in the upper right-hand picture. The part where the native person is holding in his hand, that part on the bottom, that is the atlatl. Now, the spear point is what you see in the lower left-hand photograph, and this is made out of novaculite, Pickwick chert, that gray northern flint. So all of this, once again, imported. It would have been attached to the end of that wooden spear, and then it also attached to the atlatl. And this would function in a way that allows you to extend your arm another entire arm's length. So an atlatl's primary function is to increase throwing power, as well as the distance which you can throw that spear. Now, the atlatl weight, which you see in an enlarged photo down here in the corner, would have been attached to the atlatl and provide balance. Okay? Here we see the groundstone gorgets. The groundstone gorgets are absolutely beautiful. These would have been shaped or ground using a different stone or using sand or water. Many of them are decorated, as you can see here in the enlarged photograph. In the enlarged image on the right-hand side of your screen. And most of these would have been worn like jewelry, worn around the neck. Okay. The groundstone plummets, this is one of my favorite artifacts, and I think the reason why this is one of my favorite artifacts is because we have such a big fishing culture here in Louisiana. And I always ask how many people fish with a net, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I do that, you know. And if you think about a cast net and you think at the very end, there are these lead weights at the end, and that's what a plummet we think would have acted as, is a bola or a net weight on a fishing line or a cast net. And here you see them on your screen. They range in size from about, 2 inches tall to probably 4 or 5. And they're varying weights. They're made of hematite magnetite. And these could have served several different purposes. Like I said before, on fishing lines or fishing nets. They could have been used as charm stones for religious ceremonies. And more recently, we have looked at different analyses and research that these might have been used as weights. So we're a whole different effect of these plummets could be used for now. We're looking at more domestic use rather than a utilitarian fishing use. I mean, this still would have been utilitarian as a loom weight, but something out of the norm, something we didn't think of before. Here are the groundstone celts. These are one of my favorite artifacts because of their versatility. And now a groundstone celt is specifically just a tool. So if you think of something used to chop wood, like an axe, that would have been your groundstone celt. This would have been used for chopping or shaping wood. However, it could have been used to dig up tubers. It could have been used to loosen soil, remove dirt. So very, very versatile. You know, this tool, I think I've heard it called basically the prehistoric version of a Leatherman, which is just super cool. Now, by far, the favorite artifact of everyone are the pot-bellied owls. Pot-bellied owls are incredible. They are very intricate, very detailed. The ones that you see here are made of jasper. And in the picture, you always see 5. However, more than 30 owls, or nearly 30 owls, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say more than, nearly 30 owls have been found but not all of them at poverty point. So most of them are found at sites that span from eastern Florida to Louisiana, but they all date to the poverty point culture. And none of them were found in excavations. So these are all surface finds. What is really interesting about these owls are their size, though. And when I put this picture up, people immediately think that these are very large. They're several inches tall, they're heavy, and in fact, they're not. So I've included a scale here, and it's 0 to 5 centimeters. And I always ask kids, how big is a centimeter, or how big are 5 centimeters? And I get things from kids doing their wingspan to kids making sandwiches, or, oh, they're as big as my hand. The tallest of these owls, the tallest is 1.1 inches tall. So if you look at your hand, if you look at your thumb, from the tip of your thumb to that first joint in your thumb, that's about an inch. Okay, that's the tallest owl. The rest of them are about the size of your fingernails. They're very small. So take a look at the picture and just think for a second, the patience required to carve one of these, the skill required to carve one of these, it's just a wonder. I mean, it's incredible that you could do this using nothing but a stone tool. Now the beads are made of polished chert stone. So we talked about that Pickwick chert from Tennessee. So this is a polished red chert, and they would have been worn around the neck, much like jewelry. And you've seen in the plummets and in the beads and in the pot-bellied owls and in the gorgets that they have holes in them. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay? We're going to talk about some perforator tips. But first, we're going to talk about a stone bowl. Oddly enough, there are many stone bowls at the site and very few pottery bowls. Now, pottery did exist. It's there, I promise. There's just not a lot of it. It seems the preference were for stone bowls. And these are from Georgia or Alabama. They are made of steatite, which is a stone that's very soft and easy to carve. So now let's talk about the perforators. Now the perforators are very small. Once again, some of them range in size from 1 inch to 2 inches. Some of them are smaller. Some of them have thinner tips, some of them have thicker tips. It all depends on what they were being used to drill. So how thick the stone was, what type of stone it was. And we think these could be remnants of the microblades that you see on the screen. After the microblade gets worn down so much, it could have been used as a drill tip or a perforator tip. I shouldn't say a drill tip, a perforator tip. Now the microblades would have been used for many different things, from cutting hide to scraping meat, descaling fish. So this is a blade similar to our modern knife. The poverty point objects are fascinating. These objects are local. So if you think back a couple slides ago when we were looking at the map and we were talking about where everything was, this is local. These were made from clay. Okay? This came from the site. So these are called poverty point objects, or PPOs for short. This is by far the most common artifact that we find at the site. All right, they're everywhere. And these were used for cooking. We refer to these quite often as cooking balls. So if you think of the charcoal briquettes that we use now in a grill, this is a version of that. This technology would have replaced, but not in its entirety, would have replaced the heating stones, which was the popular method of cooking at the time. So it shows you the versatility of the poverty point peoples. They're taking something that's local that they have there instead of heating up the stone, and we do find instances of that. But the amount of PPOs that we have at the site is just incredible. So you would fire these, and once they're hardened, once all the moisture is wicked out of them, you would put them in an earth oven, and you would start your fire on top of those cooking balls. You let your fire die down, you wrap your food in palmetto leaves, and then you put it on the heated PPOs and cover everything with dirt. This is your earthen oven. And this works. I promise this works. We do it at Poverty Point. It's amazing. The cooking time varies. It depends on if you're cooking a fish, if you're cooking a roast, how thick that cut of meat is. And you can change the temperature, much like we change the temperature on our modern ovens today, except we use a dial. they would have increased the amount of PPOs in that oven for a hotter temperature or decreased for a cooler temperature. Now, these come in many shapes and sizes. We have no idea what the shapes and sizes mean. Okay, so it's one of the many mysteries at Poverty Point. Now, our last artifact that we're going to talk about are the clay figurines. Most of these figurines that we see are the torso of women, and most have their heads removed. And we don't know if they were removed intentionally. We don't know if they're broken over time, but they are gone or missing. Some of them, the heads that we do have look like they're speaking. Some look like they're smiling. These could be representative of people who lived at the site. We think that they might have been used for ceremonial purposes, though. We're really just not sure why they are in the state they're in. So why they're mostly fragmented and not complete with that head attached. So if you have any ideas, let us know. Well, last but not least, we're going to talk about Poverty Point as a World Heritage Site. It became a World Heritage Site on June 22nd, 2014. It is one of only 23 in the United States. Okay? And the two women that you see holding the plaque were integral in getting this named a World Heritage Site. These two women worked incredibly hard. On the right, you see Nancy Hawkins, who was the former outreach coordinator for the Louisiana Division of Archaeology. And on the left, you see Dr. Diana Greenlee. And these two women just went above and beyond to get this named a World Heritage Site. And this comes with such a prestigious connotation. So other World Heritage Sites that you may recognize are the Great Pyramids of Giza, or Stonehenge in England, the Grand Canyon in Colorado, Monticello in Virginia, and, Thomas Jefferson's house. It's just an incredible honor to be named a World Heritage Site. And, it's open on a daily basis. You can go visit anytime. There are tours running constantly. You can ride the tram, you can walk the site, and we have demonstrations all the time. So on the weekends, we often do flint knapping. You can come learn how Poverty Point peoples made stone tools. You can throw an addle-addle. We'll teach you how to throw a spear and an addle-addle. We have cooking demonstrations where we will cook meat using the PPOs and the earth oven. Our rangers can use fire starters to make fire. So it's just a wealth of knowledge that we have that we're able to share with you at this site. And I want to thank you, Jay, for allowing me to come and give this presentation. It's just been an honor.